Hello and welcome to today's stream. Um, I've been running these events really for an opportunity to sort of share with people some of the lessons I've been learning over the last number of months and find interesting and more engaging ways to share some of those lessons with people so you can start to put them to practice in your own business. And today, what we're going to be focusing on really is how you can end your innovation freeze. Over the last sort of 12 months, many organizations have really been struggling, both in terms of the impacts of the pandemic, but actually having an innovation strategy that can respond to that uncertainty. So, what I thought I would share today and in the coming weeks is lessons I've been learning so you can start to institute new strategies, new tools, and techniques to see uncertainty as an opportunity and tackle it. So do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these. I'll be dropping lots of these sort of small events over the next coming weeks and months. Write in the comments, tell us what you want to hear. And what I'll show you through the course of this talk and at the end is how you can formulate your strategy to become a remote first organization and really power ahead. So I think it's fair to say over the last 12 months, we've brought about one of the largest remote work experiments that the world has ever seen. Technology leaders are facing a unique set of challenges: how to transition to remote working, see the uncertainty as opportunities, and adapt to the new face of changing circumstances. And technology leadership really has never been more critical, with executives needing to quickly understand and learn how to lead remote first companies. And in short, nobody had all the answers when this struck 12 months ago. But I think one of the huge insights for me, and this is one of the things I've learned from the masterminds that I've brought together, the companies that I've helped actually accelerate through this stage, and partnerships that I've run with Slack to do that, is that the most successful companies didn't rely on serendipity, luck, or one single smart decision. It was actually building systems to innovate and adapt as they learned their way through the uncertainty that we were facing to succeed. So I'll be sharing some of those systems with you and how you can start to apply them in your own business. Now, when the pandemic hit in March 2020, it was a challenging time. Um, and over the last 12 months, I've been working with the executive team at Slack to build up a community of 150 executives from Fortune 1000 companies. As a remote working platform, Slack wanted to provide guidance and leadership to those at the forefront of this change. And us working together to help people unlearn and relearn and break through was sort of a perfect partnership for. So what I'll be sharing is not only the lessons we've learned from working and coaching and advising the world's most innovative companies through these ups and downs, but how those who have sort of installed can get restarted, and then you can start to define your way. It's not all remote and not the old in person, but a better way to sort of reimagine and reinvent how you work. Now, one of the biggest sort of shocks for most people, actually, even through the pandemic, was the rate of innovation. We've seen the actual numbers of patents sort of go through the floor, which is a shock. Now, it's not unnatural when you have recessions for patents to sort of hold out. And while patents registration might be a poor proxy necessarily for perfect innovation, it's one of the ones we use. And you can see here that we've just had a massive sort of eroding of all the innovation that's been happening. And for me, this was sort of a really interesting question to start formulating about how can we build the systems to continuously innovate in the face of this uncertainty. And there were sort of three main archetypes that really just came and emerged. Leaders who were ready and saw this opportunity to accelerate, many companies who stalled and froze and stopped, but also the reinventors, people who saw the different ways that they could change their business. Now, for the leaders, these were remote ready, well structured for rapid data driven innovation in a fully digital economy. A remote sort of enabled work environment is sort of table stakes for Zoom, PayPal, Slack, and their ilk. Even Home Depot was actually one of the top 25 companies to succeed during this time, but they accelerated through the pandemic. But there are also people who struggled simply to keep their operations afloat and let alone foster innovation or remote working reality. Everyone around the globe was sort of becoming conditioned to not being able to make progress in this space. So, how can we help these people make progress? And then, sort of the latecomers, the reinventors that are actually leapfrogging and making some moves ahead. One of the most interesting examples of the sort of reinventors for me was an auto parts manufacturer that I worked with for these extremely expensive machines. And they used to have to send the 6 engineers all around the world to service their machines, really expensive, really hard to do. And through the pandemic, they flipped their business model and started offering services where the very experienced engineers, through virtual reality, were coaching operators all over the globe how to reinstall, service, maintain these actual really expensive machines. So that's been a chance for them to sort of reinvent how they work. But why innovation is down? Well, for many folks, they took a wait and see approach, and that wasn't really the way to go. They struggled, they got stuck, the uncertainty made them freeze. But also, they lacked the tooling. Many organizations that I've spent time with is that they don't have good collaboration tools that they can work from anywhere. And when you don't have these tools, when you're not used to using these tools, then you don't have the skills to work remotely together. And even myself, as someone who is a remote first business and has delivered all of my training, coaching, and advising remotely over the last 6 years, I'm still learning this all the time. It's challenging, it's not easy, but starting from zero and trying to go has been a real inhibitor. So, what I want to try and share is really 7 ways that you can sort of stop stalling, start reinventing to not only lead and stop lagging in the future of work. And a lot of this is really from the insights that I've discovered from working with companies over the last 12 months. So, the first thing you really need to start thinking about is start designing and testing how people are going to start working differently in your company. For many companies where they might be at the bottom of the stack here and they were just thinking about how they can get laptops and people connected or running sort of poor quality remote meetings to actually remote working, really you need to be start thinking about a remote first work. Many of the patterns we're seeing to emerge is this notion of 3-2-2. So 3 days maybe in the office, two at home, and two taking a rest. Most people don't want to go back to the office. And if we are going back, it's certainly nothing like it was before. You might see people coming together specifically for very focused, short collaboration sessions and highly creative work. But for the most part, most people want to sort of remain uh, much more flexibility than they have at home. And the bar is being raised. Spotify have now said that they're going to pay San Francisco and New York City rates regardless of where people live. So you're going to see the bar now for remote first talent competition being lifted higher and higher and higher. And that means you need to start changing the way your business works. So even at Slack, Stuart Butterfield, the CEO, has now moved to New York. They hired their first chief people officer, Nadia Rollinson, in Chicago. They're not going to have any more executive hires in San Francisco to 2021. So this is even starting to federate out and distribute your leadership team and starting to think about where are the places you want to be and play and designing for a remote first culture, not just getting people laptops and trying to run meetings. So that means when you have this notion, you really got to start innovating about how you communicate or start over communicating what is happening in your business and how you're responding. Certainly through the pandemic, there was no better example of this of the CEO of Marriott Hotels, Arnie, for such a crisp and clear communication about the challenges that that business was facing and how they were going to have to let some of their staff go and descale the actual work that they were doing. But he provided it on Twitter, a very simple, short format. Now, this is kind of interesting for other leaders to start thinking about because you need to start communicating in multi modes, multi formats for communication, so people can dive in and understand very crisply and clearly what you're talking about. Some of that will be video, some of that will be written. But I think one of the biggest misnomers that people have and what needs to be changed is this notion of letting people pull information when they want more, not push information upon them. And simple examples of this is just like Arnie's video, right? It was a short communication, a couple of minutes in a video format that people could watch at their convenience. Wasn't calling huge all hands, wasn't trying to get everyone scheduled across multiple time zones. It was a piece of information communicated to people that they could pull when they wanted it. And then dig deeper. I'd offer a breadcrumb, a trail. So when people might watch a short video, they have opportunities then to dig deeper into a longer communication. So when information is relevant to people, they know when to go deeper and can pull more. But this notion of pushing information, keep telling people to come to big meetings, big presentations, is actually a fallacy, especially around remote working. So start thinking about how people can pull rather than you push information upon them. And the most important part then is to keep people aligned. Your ability to move information and keep people aligned and engaged has never really mattered more. So it's not so much about these big all hands, big meetings, big presentations, big long emails. You need to start thinking about smaller, frequent information updates to help people understand and stay close to what's happening. And probably two of the sort of good examples of this, again, were at Slack and Atlassian. So Stuart cut all the big all hands meetings that used to be an hour and highly productionized down to these sort of shorter 30 minutes, but more frequent. So he could share updates of daily of what he was focusing on and how that mattered to the team. Again, available on demand. Even smaller were the co-founders and CEOs of Atlassian, where they send 90-second or minute videos to their teams, regularly talking about what they're trying to do and change. You know, giving people much more of a live sort of sense of updates. And this is what people are used to. You have to start recognizing that the type of communications that people are used to in their personal and social life, they also have the same expectations of that feed and frequency in their work life. So you need to start thinking about how you can match some of those moments. And this is why the tooling actually becomes so important. You have to give people the best collaboration tools so they can use them to work and operate. Again, people compare the quality of the collaboration tools in their personal life as they do to their work life, especially younger people. Right, so every minute that people sit around waiting, wondering how they're actually going to work together, it's a loss in productivity. And you can even start to think about, for every hour meeting you're running, how much time is spent on setup, trying to get tools right, forcing the collaboration to happen. So this is why it's really important to start picking a set of tools, start instituting them across your whole company, get people comfortable using them, and understand that they're comparing them to their social life in terms of the quality and speed at which they can collaborate with people. Well, the other action that's really important, though, is also designing collaboration into your work. Serendipity doesn't just happen. You have to intentionally really make it happen. And this is one of the questions I've really got leaders to start to think about how collaboration is happening. And one little technique I often get people to do is sort of, when you were in person, what were some of the sort of implicit little steps that you would be taking ahead of each meeting? Understanding who's there, is it cross-functional? What's a convenient time to do it? What questions do we want to try and answer? Who are some of the best people to answer that? Are they there? Do we have people who will give us fresh or challenge our thinking? You need to be really explicit about, when you think about a remote first session, to understand what was implicit in person and really design that experience really well. And so simple things like just invite wildcard people to come along to your sessions, challenge your thinking, keep it cross-functional and as open as possible. This sort of notion of designing the collaboration you're going to have is so key to get great outcomes from the sessions when you do bring people together. And then the last ones to think about, even from these main people perspective, is you really need to build people's network, especially when you're onboarding new hires and work hard to build their network in their company. You know, on the podcast, I had Sarah Wood, who's the CEO of Calusa. It's a online platform for managing energy, green energy specifically. And they've scaled their business from 40 to 400 people over the last year, with people hired all over Europe. One of the things that was very apparent to her is that they had to bring people together, give them buddy systems, help them understand how the company work, be able to read through your communication tools to see the language, the culture, the way people collaborate. Super important to help build people's network when they come on board. So you just don't have the same people group things stuck together. You're bringing fresh thinking. You're helping people feel part of the team. Another really important part, again, about building network is just celebrating small wins. So as you start to ship things, make your work visible, really recognize the contribution that new people are making, and help surface that so they feel really part of the culture, and can keep improving. And then the last point is really about transparency. It has really sort of never mattered more. And one of the things that has been really important for us is now we're seeing the entire person. We don't just have this facade of who's at home and who's at work. It's the entire person we're starting to see, looking into people's homes, getting to know them better. Nothing has ever been this experience before, and it's having lots of positive effects. People are more humane at work, more themselves. But the other part that goes with that is we have to make as much information as we can transparent, so people can start to find and pull the information that they need. People are working at different time schedules. What works for their home life that they can be successful managing both parts of their world. So I think the more you can start to make these informations available to people, it makes it even more power, seeing the entire individual for who they are. And I think the companies who've done this really, really well are the companies that are going to succeed. People are looking more and more about what type of companies they want to contribute, especially from the pandemic. So if you're not able to make that tools transparent, see the whole person, have high quality collaboration tools so people can be successful, this is sort of where you could potentially lose your talent. So as I said, this was really a chance for me just to sort of share a couple of sort of the insights I've had from working with these companies over the last number of weeks and months and years. I'll be putting out a whole bunch of various different other reports and case studies. Most importantly, probably coming up is with American Airlines. So how I help them actually prepare themselves to be able to not only respond to the pandemic, but accelerate and create faster feedback loops and better products sooner to market. So my only ask for you is, this is a small experiment. This is me sort of sharing some of these lessons, and I'd love to get your feedback. So see if you can like hold up your phone and take a scan of this IRQ code and then give me some feedback for yourself about some of the things that have sort of stood out to you, what you'd like to see more of and less of. As I said, the companies who have succeeded through this pandemic have not relied on serendipity. We built the systems to get there. So I want you to sort of think about your sort of 7 steps that you might want to think about when you're sort of tackling these sorts of equations. Get intentional about what you really want to do. Start designing for the remote first work. Think about a remote first culture. How are you going to start experimenting with that? Innovate how you communicate. Think about how people can pull information rather than push it upon them. Send more smaller, frequent updates to align teams. But make sure you've toolings that you're investing in. People will want to work in a more distributed manner. So if you don't have tools that are at parity with their social life in your work life, you're going to lose talent. And intentionally design those collaboration moments. Make sure you're designing serendipity, or make what was implicit explicit from the in-person to the remote world, and make sure you've tactics in place to do that. Build people's network as they join the company. Give them a buddy. Make sure they understand what's important and how to contribute to it. And be as transparent as possible. See the entire person. It's not just this division between work and life. It's actually the entire person we're focusing around now. And make as much of that information inside the company as transparent as possible. My name's been Barry O'Reilly. If you're interested to learn about how you could apply this strategy in your company, just reach out to me. I love helping organizations who are trying to lead business model innovation, new product development, and culture transformation. Take it easy.